every time that there is a shooting incident in the United States, you start to see these crazy discussions going on about gun control. David Hogg, who is a Parkland survivor who became anti-gun activist and travels around. You can pay him to be a speaker. He charges a pretty good amount of money. But anyway, he recently posted on Twitter, the problem with guns in America are suburban white women voting Republicans into office and flooding our schools with guns. So now the biggest threat to America are suburban white women. These statements are crazy. And what's funny about it is it doesn't even make any sense, because every time a Republican is elected in office, gun sales drop. Every time a Democrat is elected into office, gun sales soar. In fact, it's arguable that the Democratic Party is the largest friend of the guns and ammunition industry. I'm going to get to that in a second. I wouldn't even call it an industry anymore. And we're going to get a little bit into what's happening and what is actually the biggest threat to our Second Amendment rights. But another example that I wanted to just bring up of just crazy thinking, right? Just crazy thinking. Joy Behar, who is on The View, and, you know, I don't know. I don't even know how this lady, I don't even know who listens to this lady. She's pretty far out there. But she, after this recent incident, was talking on The View with her counterparts about gun control. And she made the comment that shooting a deer with an AR-15 rifle would mutilate the meat beyond the ability to even eat the meat.
A chance to weigh in on the topic of what happened in Maine and AR-15s.
Yeah, I would love to see an assault weapons ban. Like President Reagan, I don't believe they're a sport or hunting instrument. It's like shooting fish in a bucket, but that's my take.
But also, if you shoot with an AR-15, let's say you shoot a deer, you can't eat it. Because you basically demolish
in addition to that, but the hunt is about an actual difficult process, not massacring bodies of any kind.
Another thing, okay, to the blonde lady.
A chance to weigh in on the topic of what happened in Maine and AR-15s.
Yeah, I would love to see an assault weapons ban. Like President Reagan, I don't believe they're a sport or hunting instrument. It's like shooting fish in a bucket.
Okay, this is what cracks me up about these people is she was talking about Ronald Reagan. She agrees with Ronald Reagan. Well, she doesn't even know what she's agreeing with the guy on. He's talking about AK-47 machine guns, not an AR-15 rifle.
I do not believe in taking away the right of the citizen to own guns for sporting, for hunting and so forth, or for home defense. But I do believe that an AK-47, a machine gun, is not a sporting weapon or needed for defense of a home.
It should be noted that not all AK-47s are machine guns either.
This is an AMD-63. These are very common in gun shops. This is a Micro Draco. This is made to be ultra compact. This happens to be a machine gun that we rent at Off-Grid.
Clearly, this just shows you how much these people don't understand what they're even talking about. The AR-15 rifle actually uses a smaller smaller bullet than, you know, your typical 30-06, which you use for a deer. When you are shooting an animal, for whatever the reason is, whether you're harvesting a cow on your property or you're shooting a deer out in the wild, maximum tissue damage on impact is the most humane way to take that animal down, to have the maximum amount of damage when that bullet hits them. The smaller the bullet is that there's actually been debates on whether or not that bullet is a humane or ethical way of taking an animal. So there's been debates on whether or not you should be using an AR-15 while hunting deer for that reason, not the reason of over-mutilating the deer.
Hey, Steve and Caleb from Brownells here with another edition of Smithbusters. And today we're going to ponder the question, is it ethical to hunt deer with a 223/556? Caleb, what do you think?
Well, first of all, this, like many other of our Smithbusters, this was a user-requested one.
Oh.
So With that question, I think it certainly can be ethical to hunt whitetail with a 223 or 5.56. And with many caliber types, it all comes down to the ammunition you're using.
And the skill of the user.
The skill of the user, absolutely.
It's a big deal.
That's a huge deal. There have been plenty of very large calibers that have not ethically taken whitetail because of the user's inability to hit his shot properly. So it doesn't matter how big the caliber is, it really comes down to where you put it. And I say it doesn't matter how big the caliber is. To an extent, it does. And with modern ballistics, 223, you using the proper bullet, it's going to expand plenty to ethically kill a whitetail deer.
And it has been accepted by a number of states where it is legal to use a 223 during deer season.
Yes.
So the research has been done, and as long as you do your part, buy the right ammunition, preferably a scoped rifle like this to pinpoint your shot. You know, just don't go out there with military ball ammo and expect great results.
It's actually a very adequate rifle to take down a deer. And the ammunition is lighter. That's why the AR-15 was designed, right? We needed lighter ammunition going into battle. But on the flip side of that, when I go out in my pasture and let's say I'm taking care of a pest problem, we have a lot of coyotes. Coyote populations have to be kept in check. I know a lot of people hate it when you say, oh, I shot a coyote. But if the reality is they don't have any alpha predators around. We are the only ones responsible for keeping their population in check, and then occasionally there are bounties put out on coyotes to help keep their population in check. And any animal that gets out of control in an ecosystem is a threat to the ecosystem. So now that I've justified myself on this, I would actually like to have an AR-15 for the purpose of controlling coyotes. Most of the time, I scare them off. Occasionally, they do become problems and they keep coming around, and those are the ones that have created a habit coming to our place and we have to remove them. But so the AR-15, no, it's not causing mutilation to deer when you hunt with them. If anything, it requires somebody with a more precise shot to shoot a deer with an AR-15. AR-15 is still a great gun for smaller game, and it has a lot of uses. It's not an it's not like this, machine gun that everybody's making it out to be. But that's how crazy, some of these conversations are. Now, one of the things that I have noticed personally, and maybe you have noticed this too in your own arsenal, but there are guns in each of our arsenals that are becoming basically obsolete. We can't use them because we can't get the ammunition for them. Think about, a 410 bore, for example. A 410 is not a very big shotgun. It's something that was sold at Walmart for years and years because it's a very lightweight shotgun. Anybody can use it. My wife has a 410 that we use the 410 on our property more than we use any other gun, because most of the time when we're having to take care of something, it is a small pest of some sort, and the 410 is just kind of the go-to, shotgun on our property. If you wanted to go buy 410 bullets right now, from what I've been able to find, you're going to pay about $1.50 to $1.80 for a 410, which is a small shotgun bullet, or round. It's not a bullet. But the point is that gun is basically obsolete. A very common gun, an entry-level shotgun, has become virtually obsolete because the ammunition is expensive if you can find it, and is nowhere to be found. Where you could get 12 gauge all day long. 12 gauge is a much larger round. 12 gauge shotgun, we have those as well, and we've been buying more 12 gauge rounds lately because we recognize that slowly certain types of bullets and certain types of rounds are coming off of the market, and they have been since COVID. So what's going on here? Another gun of ours that is virtually obsolete is the P239, which shoots the 357 SIG. I can't find 357 SIG. If I go to a store, nobody carries 357 SIG. If I go to my local gun dealers, the police department buys all the 350 SIG that they get in. So what's happening is we're starting to see a lot of guns that are basically becoming ineffective. Like, you can't use them. So it's almost like taking your guns, because if you can't get ammo for them, then what's the point of them? There are a lot of conspiracies around what's going on with the ammunition market, and I can tell you that a lot of these people are on the right track. It's not a conspiracy at all. It's pretty blatant, but there is definitely a decrease in ammunition availability to the consumer. There is definitely a decrease in the types of ammunition that are being put on the market, and it is definitely happening intentionally. I was talking to somebody the other day about the Lake City plant that shut down. It didn't shut down. What Lake City is it is a plant that produces 85% of the small arms ammunition for the United States government. They cover almost every agency, FBI, CIA, the military. I mean, that plant produces a massive amount of small arms ammunition. And then it sells a lot of that excess small arms ammunition to businesses like Bass Pro Shops, Walmart, all the other retailers who retail said ammunition to the consumer. And it basically went in the last couple weeks, and canceled its commercial contracts. Said, we're not selling you any ammunition. Why? Because the government has required almost every round being made at that facility to go to the government. And people think this is government stockpiling, although we are in the midst of going to war. And my theory is that the government feels that we are going into a much wider spread war. So it would make sense for the government to say, this facility is making 85% of our ammunition for small arms. We need all of that ammunition going to us. The bigger problem, and where this all starts, happened much earlier than Lake City. Lake City is just the subsequent action of what happens when you have a facility that's main customer is the United States government. You see, back in World War II, the United States government had about 84 ammunition manufacturing facilities across the United States. Today we only have 14 that are publicly owned ammunition factories. And so what happened between World War II and now is a lot of different things that are compiled together. Number one, we weren't in World War II anymore, and even then, the Vietnam War, we started using private companies to manufacture ammunition for the United States government. So the United States government started moving a lot of its ammunition necessities onto private corporations, and part of that also happened during a certain presidency. And this is the link. This is a link and a tie that everybody needs to understand. Everybody needs to understand this, because when you go out and you cast a vote, if your concern is funding these weapons and ammunition corporations, you need to understand the history of how it's gotten to the point of where it is today. Under the Clinton administration in 1996, the military basically did an efficiency study of how to make ammunition more efficient. And what they decided was that consolidation of ammunition manufacturing.
The sound went out here. What I was saying was that the government consolidated manufacturing and then pushed that manufacturing or contracted it out to private manufacturers.
This changed the ammunition industry. It changed the way the government gets its ammunition, and it put two massive control factors in place that are impacting us today, and why we have the ammunition shortage today that we have. It started in 1996. It was already going on before then. We already were seeing a lot of consolidation within the private industry of ammunition companies, right? I mean, that's always been the end game for investors, is to buy out your competitor, make more money. I mean, that's part of it. But the other part of this is the government's involvement in it, and how far the government goes in this, and how much prosperity has come from certain people's regulations, which makes you wonder who's actually behind a lot of these things. If you create a scare, the first thing that happens is everybody thinks their guns are going to be taken. They run out, they buy guns, and they buy ammo, and they stock up on ammo. That is why every time a Democrat is elected to office, number one, you never see guns go away. And number two, you always see a scare that drives up gun sales and drives up ammunition sales. There is no better friend to these companies than a Democrat in office. And that is a statistically true fact. You can look it up. And I'm independent, so I'm not throwing this at Democrats or throwing this at Republicans. I'm just stating the facts. There is no better friend. And when you have that friend all of a sudden say, you know what, we're going to shut down our government-owned facilities and start contracting with you for your ammunition, then that makes that friend a lot richer, right? So, what happened in 1996 with this consolidation is it actually made ammunition more expensive for the United States government. So when it comes down to efficiency, whoever did the study was wrong. Or they were profiteering. And I think it has a lot more to do with profiteering. I think the Clinton administration was setting up a profiteering campaign that has continued through to this day. Now, with the consolidation of private companies, and then the government coming in and hiring the largest manufacturers to then manufacture most of what they need, that makes the government the largest customer of just a couple of entities. It also gives those couple of entities a significant amount of purchasing power, which continued the consolidation of the private arms industry. Remington was probably one of the more recent ones that a lot of you know about. They filed for bankruptcy in 2018. They are now owned by one of the top two. There's another problem with this. So now that the government has control over these entities, if you think for a second that the government going to a ammunition manufacturer and saying, hey, we want you to cut supply to the consumer, that they're going to say no to their largest customer. And it's a good thing for them too, because if they cut supply to the consumer, guess what happens to the ammunition? The prices go up. They can make less, prices go up. They profit more, right? I mean, this is just very basic economics. And they also have that constant buyer because the government's buying all of their ammunition. This is fact. You can look it up. This is what has happened since 1996. So besides the government having ultimate control over the two largest ammunition manufacturers in the United States as their largest customer, because the government has consolidated the industry and consolidated it to two groups, which is much easier to control than having multiple arms manufacturers. The other big problem with this that nobody is ever talking about is the fact that these private companies, corporations, are owned by shareholders. And what do we know about that? Well, we know that the shareholders of these companies aren't people like you and I. I mean, you and I might own some shares, sure. But unless you have, 5-10% ownership in one of these companies, you don't have any voting power. So a lot of indexes own these companies. And then on top of that, you have groups that own large shares of those indexes. They have more pull just as shareholders of the index than you would think, because they can go to some of those groups. And interestingly enough, after 2018, BlackRock went in and talked to Kroger, they talked to Walmart about their ESG policies and selling weapons. And we did see Walmart pull a lot of guns off the shelf during that time frame. So these are not direct shareholders who, as index shareholders, were able to go in and actually bark at some of these groups, make changes. BlackRock directly owns 15% of Vista Outdoor. They own 8% of Smith & Wesson, 16% of Ruger. So, let's just think about this for a second. They own significant shareholder direct percentages of shares of these companies that are then basically controlling your ammunition market, the gun market. And you wonder why certain calibers are no longer available on the shelves. You wonder why, there's such a shortage, a seeming shortage constantly of ammunition. It's not just people going out and stocking up on ammo every time a Democrat gets elected, which happens. It happens. But what it is is the ultimate control over the market and the ability to create shortages even when there aren't shortages, right? Even when there aren't shortages, they can create shortages by just not, by decreasing capacity and then driving prices up. It is a huge, huge moneymaker, which is why keeping somebody like Biden in office isn't going to stop guns. It's not going to stop guns from being sold. And that's not really the problem when it comes to mass shootings, is it? I mean, you can sell guns to every responsible person in the United States, and that doesn't mean that they're going to go out and shoot a bunch of people. I mean, that's the rhetoric that people want you to hear. But what's funny is that the people making that argument are pushing the agenda of the ammunition manufacturers and their profits, because they're creating a scare tactic saying, okay, this happened, now we're going to come in and we need to take these people's guns away. So everybody goes out and they buy more guns. They don't care about the price of the ammunition. They're going to stock up anyway because they're going to take their guns, their ammunition, and that's what they do, right? So it's kind of taking advantage of that situation. And the guys manufacturing the ammo love it. And people like Biden, people like Clinton, and Obama is often labeled as the greatest gun salesman throughout American history because he sold the most amount of guns with his policies. He never took them away, but he definitely scared the heck out of people, drove up gun sales, and you've got to look at where the money goes. You got to look at who's behind this. If you want to save our Second Amendment rights, right now, we really do not have the right. At any moment in time, that ammunition can be pulled from the shelves. At any moment in time, that ammunition can be cut off. They can literally take guns from your arsenal and make them obsolete in your arsenal because you can't get the ammunition to use them. The only way that we could possibly protect our Second Amendment is to demonopolize the ammunition and firearms industry. Split them back up again. And that would be the ultimate protection to our Second Amendment rights. Having more sources. Ultimately, the best thing for the consumer is a free market. That free market is no longer a free market when it becomes manipulated through government contracts. The consolidation and shutdown of publicly owned ammunition facilities to feed into law enforcement, military, etc., and then putting those contracts into the private sector gave the government the ultimate control over the private sector. And then consolidating the private sector and making it very easy for some of these big funds to come in and then take control over these corporations was the other part of it. That kills a free market. The only fair and free market is one that has competition, one that has many producers, one that has many ammunitions. I mean, you look at all these brands, you see a ton of brand names, you don't realize that they're all owned by two companies. Most of you don't know that. Some of you do. But to the average person, they don't know that. And what they also don't know is that these companies have become more powerful, have made billions of dollars off of the Democrats' party's policies. They are the largest weapons dealers in the world, and they're making a fortune at it. So that's just a little bite of reality for those of you who are debating these things and looking at these things and wondering, well, where's the ammo going? Was it Lake City? No, it happened before Lake City. Lake City is just the most recent example of what happens and how much control they actually do have over the industry. And then you wonder, well, if we put another Republican in office, we're going to have more guns out there. No, the highest gun sales happen every time a Democrat is elected because they instill these fear tactics. The same people who are increasing gun sales with their fear tactics are the same people that are responsible for consolidating the industry and giving these corporations, these solitary institutions and hedge funds, the massive amount of money that's coming from the markups on ammunition from the scarcity of it. If you didn't have a gun scare, an ammo scare in the marketplace, the prices of ammunition would go down because people wouldn't be running out stocking up on it. It's a very well thought out and orchestrated thing that's going on. And it's not something that you have to get a ton of people across an industry involved with, because there are only 2 corporations. And the people out there like Joy Behar and Behar, or however you say her name, and this David Hogg guy, is that his name? David Hogg? Yeah, David Hogg. They're the ones that are making them rich. I don't know about you, but I think we need to do something about it. I think that something has to be done. Something has to be done to restore a balance. Because to me, what we're seeing, it has already gone too far. We've already lost control of our Second Amendment rights because of this scenario. If there isn't something that's done about it, I mean, there's a very limited future for our rights.